Hey babies. Hey babies. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Happy Thursday. Happy Wizards have new players day. Look at Callow. Callow's wearing a Wizards hat today. I can't believe you put on a Wizards hat.
I was wearing one yesterday. You didn't even notice.
You passively aggressively do not like that team. I just cannot believe you're actually wearing their hat.
You have to remember that even if I don't like them, they are still a team in this town, and that means I love them.
I
Like
know.
I call the Wizards the redheaded stepchild of my sports fandom. I actually have the potential to love them just as much as every other team, but they just constantly let me down. So I have to keep my distance.
I love the NBA, but their track record of mediocrity to dysfunction to just inability to put together a team for any period of time that even comes close to contending has finally worn thin on me. I just
On you.
I can't take it. Now I'll be back on board the second they're good.
Of course.
I know me.
Yeah.
I'll be back on board the second they're good, which God, the luck just doesn't go their way, which I'll get to in a bit because you all want me to talk about football, and I'll be glad to do that. And I'll get into the NBA draft in a minute and what the Wizards ended up doing and what Ace Bailey ended up not having happen on his behalf and all that stuff. So I'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, I want to start with the Commanders on two fronts. One, I thought the Washington Post did a really good job of kind of laying out the lay of the land on the DC City Council and where everybody stands on the RFK, what is now going to be a standalone bill that, again, doesn't sound like is screeching to a halt or in any real danger, but is being slowed down a little bit. But I want to start with a conversation I had last night with some friends. I was playing in a poker game last night, and they were all asking me what's going on with Terry McLaurin. And I said to them what I said here, which is, if I knew what he was asking for, I could probably give you a better answer as to what's going on here. But, you know, all I can guess at this point is he wants multiple years. He wants probably something in the neighborhood of $30+ million a year, however that is structured. And we've talked kind of through this for, you know, I don't know, it's been going on for like a month now where he didn't show up to some of these OTA things. And, you know, I'm like, here's the problem. Like he's 30. Like I love him. Everybody loves him. Everybody loves Terry. Who doesn't love Terry? I want to see him play the bulk, if not his whole career here. I want him to get paid too. I'm not like, let me just say that up front. Like, I don't think he's out of line asking for something. Like, of all people, he is not out of line asking for something. But he is, unlike some of these other receivers that got the extensions that they got, he is 30. He's not 25, 26 like CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. He doesn't have the stat lines like either one of those guys either. He's got he's a great player, but they're ridiculous players, and there's a difference. And I don't want to say anything that's insulting at all, but let's just be honest about it. Like, Jamar Chase is or is not the best receiver in the NFL. He could have 2,000-yard seasons. That's just not happening with Terry McLaurin for a number of reasons, and there's just a difference. So I told these guys last night, I'm like, the problem is I just don't know what he's asking for. Are his demands, quote unquote, realistic? What numbers is he looking for? And how long is the deal that he wants? And all of those things, in my opinion, are complicated. One, because this team has not shown the propensity to just go, all right, just give anybody what they want. They haven't done anything like that yet. The only person that they've signed long-term is Sam Cosmi. Even the acquisitions of Debo or Tunsil or Marshawn, they haven't altered the contracts yet. There's a lot of non-guaranteed money on Marshawn and Tunsil where it's like, you're going to have to show us. So it's not like, I don't think either one of them went to him for a new deal because they have multiple years left, but they have not just gone like, all right, what would make you happy? Like, they have not done anything like that. Terry's case is very specific. And when I started talking to them, like this one guy I was playing with just turned to me and he goes, what's his leverage, Terry? And I go, honestly, now that you put it that way, it's that he'll sit out this year, but he has to be willing to do that. And I don't really think that, like I've said this all along, I have not heard from either side that it's acrimonious. I think his side has used this word frustrated, and I get it. Like, I totally understand. Like, they probably want something. The team, for all the reasons I'm already laying out, like, not only have they not done the just give him what he wants deals, but he is 30. The numbers are very high, on some of these other receivers. Is he in that class? Yes, to some degree. No, to some degree. Like, he's older than some of these guys. Like, I think this is complicated. And the other thing that they said to me, and it really kind of dawned on me, and I go, you know what? Like, I think you're right. Let's say he played out this year. Who else on this team would they franchise?
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
Nobody. So it is possible that they're, I don't know what's going on here, but it is possible that they're going to play this game where they go, are you seriously not going to play for a cap hit of $25 million this year? The 20 of which you would get, which I know isn't 30, but you'll be a free agent, and we're going to have to franchise you at worst to give you either a multi-year deal or pay you amongst the top 5 players at your position next year. Are you really not going to do that? So I when I was thinking that through, that part of it, I'm like, you know what? Like, I wonder how much of a hard line the Commanders are going to take, again, without exactly knowing what he's asking for, length or price.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, though, we start to veer into Jerry and Cowboys territory, though. If you want to keep him long term, the longer you wait on this deal, the more expensive it gets. And I'm not saying they're giving him a top 5 deal, but you'd rather get it done sooner rather than later, because then that price just goes up. Here's what I'll say, too, though. You and I had this discussion a couple of years ago when, remember, we were talking about, Montez Sweat's a free agent. Chase Young is a free agent. I think, was it Allen that was a free agent too that year as well? It was either Allen or Payne, I think. Maybe I might be misremembering that. But remember that happened. And you and I said, well, if they want to keep him, they should probably sign one and franchise the other. Well, wouldn't you rather just get Terry's out of the way and then maybe you want to franchise Debo at the end of the year? Like, that's another possibility. I'm just saying, I agree with you. The leverage isn't crazy, but at the same time, I think Terry McLaurin, out of anybody, has warranted, hey, I'd like to get a deal done. Let's play ball. And I'll say this too, like up front, as kind of you're saying too, we've heard no animosity between the two, like no finger pointing of they're lowballing me, or kind of from the team of he's asking for something ridiculous. The fact that we haven't heard anything from either side does tell me negotiations are happening, and they're happening, respectfully.
There is a little bit of, and again, this is a bad comparison because Saquon Barkley not being on the Giants is just a massive, massive mistake, especially over it sounded like not a lot of money, at least initially. Yeah. Like it was just like, I don't know why you drew the line in the sand. And I don't want to, like, Barkley might be the best, running back in the NFL. After the season he had, he's probably going to the Hall of Fame now, so like, I think this is a different caliber of his position skill set, which is why I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison. Like, I think Terry's really, really good, but again, in fairness and not to be insulting, I don't think he's Jamar Chase. Like, he's not the best receiver at his position. Barkley could argue that he's the best player at his position. So I think it's a little bit different, but I do think, and this was part of the thing with the Giants I didn't understand. I'm kind of like, if it's all kind of the same and you're just taking this stupid line in the sand, why, Giants, do you not want a guy that you're going to put in your ring of fame? Like, why don't you want him? And this is where Terry is for me. So there is I want him to play out the vast majority of his career. Even though he is 30, I still don't see him as someone who's aging the wrong way. In fact, last year, when he had the quarterback play that he had his best season. He's been consistent. He never gets injured. He is always like, I'm not worried about what shape he's going to be in when he does eventually come back for training. I'm not worried about any of that stuff. I know where his heart is. I know what he means to the organization. And so there is that part of this that I take into account and think about, because I don't want to take a hard line with him. I don't want to insult him. I don't want it to turn sideways, because I know what he means. And I think he could be an all-timer here if he plays out. He may already be, but if he plays out the majority of his career here, he can be Santana Moss or more, especially if they go and win, or some of the other players that like kind of live on as legends of the franchise that'll always be connected to it in one way or the other. And secondarily, I'm like kind of also like for you, Terry, like just I know you probably know this, but if you don't know, you need a reminder of who you are here, what it would mean for you to play the majority of your career here. And then lastly, look who your ownership group is here right now. I know you have a lot of desires about going into business or doing many different things. You are working with the perfect group to help you into whatever follows your playing career because of what their skill set is, how wide a range of ownership they have, all the different businesses they're involved in. Like, there's a lot of reasons to be here for him. And that's why I feel like this is going to work out. I just don't know what they're asking for. And after having this conversation last night, I was sitting there going, if Peters is just doing his job, which I feel like he's done, and I don't think he's been put to the test with too many players yet. But that said, like, he's held a line. Like, he has not just given somebody what they want. If there was ever somebody in this uniform this early in kind of the stage of all of this that deserves the opportunity to say, this is what I want because you know who I am and you know what I mean and you know what I bring to the table, it is this player, but it is complicated by his age. And it is complicated by he's really good, but he's not this guy. And without knowing what they're asking for, this is where I think Peters is in his first, like, real, I guess, depending on what he's asking for, jam, if you will, where he knows he's got to get something done. The ownership's going to want him to get something done. Quinn's going to want him to get something done. Like, Terry doesn't want to go anywhere as far as I can tell. And he should have no reason to want to go anywhere for all those other reasons that we discussed. The question is, how hard of a line are they going to push? And will Josh Harris or the other owners ever get involved if it gets really weird as we get closer to camp? But I agreed with this guy I was playing with last night where he's like, what's his leverage? And I go, other than just saying he's going to sit out, which I don't believe he would do. Like, he's not making $8 million. He's making over 20, and the cap hit is 25 if you count the prorated version of the signing bonus that he signed a few years ago. So he's not making no money. He's not making what he should. Welcome to a marketplace like that he signed 3 years ago and things changed. But this isn't Trey Hendrickson where he's making 15 and everyone else is making 30. He's getting 25 and a few players are making more than that than him. So what is his leverage? I don't even really, other than making this uncomfortable and then actually following through and not playing, I don't know that he has a lot of it here. And I think that's what's complicating this too.
I think you undersell, though, the type of player that he is, that this is the exact type player that Quinn and Peters and Harris all have called, a commander, right? Yeah. That he exudes all of that. I think you undersell what would happen if they decide, we don't want to re-sign that guy. That whole entire locker room goes, wait, you don't want to re-sign that guy, the de facto leader, the guy that shows up, the guy that, went through 20 quarterbacks from the time he's like, I'm just saying, yes, actual financial leverage, there's not much there. But I will say, whatever they do with him is going to hold weight, I think, for the organization.
I agree.
This organization has hit nothing but home runs, since they got here. But this one, if they botch it, the public's going to grill them a little bit over it because everyone loves Terry. Everyone chants his name. You heard his name being chanted at away playoff games. People love him so much. So I'll say, this is the first one where I think what they do is going to matter publicly, and people in that locker room are going to ask questions of, well, if they weren't going to take care of him, why are they going to take care of me? I think there's a little bit of that.
Length of time matters here, though. Like, you can't, if you're Adam Peters, you can't just give everybody what they want. Like, you have to do everything cautiously. And that's why he's got a hard job here on this one. Like, is McLaurin walking in there and asking for a 3-4 year extension? Well, that would get him to 34 years old.
Right.
Okay. Like, if I'm Adam Peters, I'm going, I don't know about that. Look at the length of deals that they've done with everybody else. Like, do I think Terry McLaurin could play a really good 3 more years? Yeah. From everything I've seen, I think he could. but that could change. You need to be careful. It's football, and he's on the other side of 30. Like, you have to think about these things. He's not 25. He's not CeeDee Lamb or Jefferson or Chase. He's not 25 years old. They have to think about this. I agree. There is no quote unquote outcome where they botch this, that I think looks good. Like this, that cannot happen. He's got to come back. I'm just wondering to what length they will go with him to make him happy. And in talking about what real leverage he has, some of it falls on what you just said, which is, how this fan base feels about me. And secondarily, and this is reality, now that they didn't pick a receiver that would replace him in the draft, they need him this year. If they think they're going to win a Super Bowl, they got no shot if he doesn't show up and play. Like, they're going to be asking Luke McCaffrey to be a number one receiver. Like, that's not going to happen. So I hear out all sides here. And again, I just want to caution, because I've seen people report this is the number he wants and all that stuff. I haven't heard anything like that. The team doesn't talk about this stuff. This is not a leaky ship whatsoever. Everyone is guessing a little bit. A couple of the guesses that I saw felt way out of line, honestly. Like, when I heard, I'm like, there's just no way on earth his people could be asking for that, or you would hear something very acrimonious going on. My gut says he wants something in the neighborhood of 30 to 32 million a year, something like that. He probably wants a decent signing bonus and a 2 to 3 year extension beyond this. Anything beyond that, I think, starts to get into a weird place of, we kind of can't do that. So why don't we just not go there? If he wants something in the mid 30s, which is what CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson got, and Chase got more than that, I think we're going to have a very honest, really rough conversation about, listen, they're 25 and go look at their stat lines. It's different. Yours is different. So like, let's just be honest about it. We love you. You're extremely important to us. We're not paying you like Jamar Chase. Like, we can't do that. So this one's just gotten a little bit tricky. I just agreed that the leverage here is really sentimental more than I think anything else, because the reality is, there is nobody on this roster outside of maybe Debo, if he has an incredible year, that I think you'd franchise other than him after this year, which means he is 6 to 8 months away from being in a position where he will either get the extension that he wants at that point or be paid in the top 5 in his position. It's another reason why I don't know that he has a tremendous amount of leverage that isn't more sentimental than anything, really.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, he was still the number one wide receiver for this team last year.
100%.
Like that is leverage. Like, he's going, who on offense is better than me, skill position wise,
Correct.
and no one's close.
Right.
No one's close, actually. Like, you could argue Debo. I'll hear you out on that. But like, in terms of consistency, there's no one close. What I would say is this too: is like, you went ahead and said, oh, he's going to be over 30, and that's a dangerous deal to give. Terry's never given the indication of, he's been banged up, he takes care of himself. He's never had a major injury where he's torn a ligament or something like that. Like, if don't
want a long-term deal for anybody at that position over 30. That's all. I agree with you. He has shown no signs that he's declining in any way. And so age for him is just a number. But there's realities for receivers at that age that are different than the ones that were given out with some of these other big deals.
Right.
So even DK's younger than him. Like, DK just got this. DK's deal is more of a model of what I would look at if the Commanders were comfortable with it than some of these other deals. He ended up getting somewhere in the neighborhood of like 60 million guaranteed. It was over a few years. That feels about like right to me. But I just don't know what length they're going to be willing to go. And there's a lot of sentimentality, but I agree with you. I'm not making a case that you move on or anything like that. Like, there is no scenario by which I think this team looks good by parting ways with him in any way, or getting into some kind of standoff where he doesn't show up at camp and isn't ready for the season. Like, that doesn't feel like an outcome that works. So the time is ticking on all of it, right? The time is really ticking on all of it. And I am advocating they get something done and make him happy. But I'm just kind of also advocating, look, like, you're going to have some level of realistic outcomes here if you're Terry's camp, because we want you here. Everybody wants you here. You're important here. I want to interview you after you win a Super Bowl wearing that uniform, because of all people that deserve it, it's you. And I want to be there, and I want to be at your Ring of Fame ceremony and all those things. I want to be there for all of it. You deserve it. there is a business aspect to this that this GM is trying to handle. I think it's his first really tough one. And I hope everybody just gets it done, I guess would be the best way I could put it. Just get it done. And I'm hoping both sides are being open and honest about all of that.
I mean, there's another like two factors here that I think are worth bringing up. And one of them is a little bit of leverage. He's going, okay, do you not want to get something done with me? And I'll either hold out or ask for a trade next year. And then guess what? I know what your roster looks like. You want to add a number one wide receiver onto the ongoing list of things that you need to constantly add to. Like that is, I think, a part of the leverage here too of you and I aren't dumb. We've said this. Peters for probably at least 1 to 2 more years is still having to find these cogs to plug into the offense and the defense because 100%. Of the way that the roster is built, right? So he's going, you want to find another number one wide receiver? Have fun with that. You know, like that's one of the factors there too. The other factor here is like, I go back to kind of what I was saying before a little bit where, you know, who wouldn't want to re-sign that guy and everything that he represents? This goes to the age-old adage of like what you and I talk about all the time. If you're not going to re-sign that guy, who are you re-signing? Like,
I agree.
There's a factor of that here too. And I'm with you. Like, I don't know what he's asking for. And there's a factor of that too. But I think at the end of the day, we all know it can't be that unreasonable coming from Terry McLaurin. He doesn't seem to scream that type of player to me.
I said this a year ago, and I worried about this part of it, that the timelines wouldn't match up. Like they went and drafted this young, he's a little bit older than some of the typical rookie quarterbacks, but he's in his, low 20s. So he's not in, and he's 5-6 years younger than Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin's his number one receiver. Like teams like to time this stuff up where they have these people, not everybody, obviously, like you could have veterans that fill in all these things, but the young stud quarterback with his number one target being that much older than him, it was just I trust Terry, and I think he's, like I know what kind of shape he's in. I don't feel like there's going to be a decline. I know where his work ethic is. And, if this kid is who we think he is, boy, is he going to love wearing this uniform now all of a sudden, differently maybe they did in the past. And that is what happened. But then here we are in this timeline part of this that I think makes this tricky. Peters does not come off to me. This team does not come off to me. While it's all, everybody's champagne and roses right now and throwing parades for everything they've done, they still have a job to do. And if you do go back to how they've handled the roster to this point, right? They have not given out major contracts to anybody but Sam Cosmi. He is the only one, and he also is very young when they did that. He's the only one they've done it with. I don't know if Tunsil's asked for anything different. He doesn't sound like he is. He showed up to what he's needed to show up to. He's got a big smile on his face. He's putting out diss videos of other people saying, don't believe me. He's got 2 years left. He said during his, when he was the Zoom he did when he was acquired, he said, they know how I feel about my contract, which is always insinuating I'd love for you to alter it. They didn't do that. They haven't messed with Lattimore's. Not that I think he has a leg to stand on off of what, happened a year ago to ask for anything. He's got 2 years left, but there is no guaranteed money. With Debo, they didn't extend him when they made him happy by guaranteeing the money, but it is just for the year. So it's all, if he doesn't perform, well, it's all as well as it ends well with him. Like, and his career is going to get derailed from this point forward if he doesn't perform here. But they didn't just go and give him some kind of long-term deal to lock him up to try to validate the reasons why they acquired him in the first place. They haven't done it with anybody. Like they gave Armstrong and Luvu and Biotish, 3-4 year deals, but not at crazy numbers. They haven't done anything where yet they've gone, just give him what he wants. They haven't done that yet. And so that's why I think also there's just going to have to be a meeting of the minds. Again, I'll go back to, I have yet once, I've been saying all along, I'm not worried about this. And I'm not worried about it because there's been no acrimony. But it just in thinking through how I was talking about it last night, somebody was like, what's his leverage? Couldn't they just franchise him next year? And what's he not going to play? Like how much? He goes, how much is he making? And I go, about 20 million. But if you add the $5 million prorated portion of the signing bonus, his cap number is about 25. And he's like, 25? And he goes, and he's that unhappy that he would sit out? What's his leverage? And I go, you're right. I don't know. It's a sentimental thing, but I agree with you. Making him angry or having some kind of split, which I really don't feel like is happening. Like, I think that would be the first time that the public goes, what is going on here? Why would you let that happen?
I think it would be also the very first time, and we've hinted at it here. It'd be the first time that we'd actually kind of find out what kind of owner Josh Harris is when it comes to the players. Like, because we've heard.
I feel like he's going to step in on this. Like
me too.
This is the one where the owner steps in and goes, just get this done. And I think like if Peters gets marching orders like that, well, you know what that starts too. Oh, we've got the owner who steps in and doesn't let the GM do it. See, this one's tricky. It really is.
The side part of this too, though, is like there has been groundwork laid. Like John got let go, signs with the Vikings, right? But what happened in the last 2 years? It was John and Duran and Terry all, having the direct line to Josh Harris. Remember, they talked about it all in the last 2 years that Harris brought all three of those guys. Those are three of the mainstays of like, tell me what I need to improve on. Remember that was the famous, I'm not an F- guy. So he wanted to improve the travel and the family stuff and things like that. Well, one of those guys is already gone, and they did that respectfully with John. Like, I think they did that in a, very respectful way this offseason. Well, the second one would be Terry. The other one's Duran, who is also a free agent at the end of this year. We kind of know what's coming most likely with him. And so I'm just saying, all of a sudden, the three guys that you also have your leadership there, they would all be gone within 3 years, essentially. Yeah. There's something to be said about that as well. Like, and I know it's the NFL, and there's a little more to it. But your three guys that you relied upon to be the kind of voice for the locker room, they would all be gone within a year. That's kind of crazy.
Well, I mean, listen, this is no coincidence that Duran is having the offseason he's having.
Of course.
Saw what happened with John. A decision, he has 2 years left, but the out after this year is not unlike John's, is very different. And if he wants it, he'll be up for either an extension or a situation like John had after this year. He doesn't really perform. Terry's not that to me. Terry to me is more like push came to shove. They may just make him play this out and go, listen, on the other side of this, you're either going to be a free agent or franchised and making a lot of money. So let's all put a big smile on our faces and move forward here because we don't want you going anywhere. And I don't think you want to go anywhere. So like Duran is going to be in a prove it year. Debo's in a prove it year. A lot of players in a prove it year. And as time passes here, number 5's going to be the de facto leader of the team if he hasn't already kind of turned into that. So, the pages are turning, right? The pages are turning. All right, let me take a quick break. Very much the show is ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. I want to get into RFK again because I thought the Washington Post did a very good job of laying out where everybody stands on this deal now that Phil Mendelson, the city council chair, has said, and I thought JP Finley did a very good job by pointing this out. 2 weeks ago, Phil Mendelson said he was not pulling this out of, like when they had the secret closed door meeting that Mark Seagraves blew up on them. And they said, no, none of this stuff is happening. We're not pulling it out of the budget. And then 2 weeks later, there he was pulling it out of the budget to make it a standalone bill, while at the same time saying we're protecting the money language in the budget to fund this if it were to get approved. Eric Flack, I saw, is the WUSA reporter who's been all over this, put out like a 2-minute video. And there were two things that came up in it that really stood out to me that he said is that you're hearing from the city council, they're calling it ludicrous to like do it on the timeline that they want. While at the same time, Mendelson is saying a public hearing on the standalone version of this bill would happen by the end of July. The team would then make its presentation by the end of July. A vote could then come soon thereafter. So there would be a delay of the timeline that the mayor and the team wants by, well, best case scenario, a month. Worst case scenario, don't know, which is why I think the team and the mayor are going, don't do this. Don't make up fake deadlines. They're not going to like this. And all of a sudden they're going to call Wes Moore, to which in Eric Flack's report, he said the same thing where he goes, are they really going to go to Maryland, which is the leverage point for DC. I don't think they have a lot of it, but I think the leverage point is they know the team wants to go there. It is their first choice by far. There is no close second. They want this to happen. The city council knows this, but the team has also put their money where their mouth is on it by funding not all of it, but the majority of it, right?
Yeah, 2/3 of it.
It's a big number that they're putting in there. The city would have to pay for new infrastructure on any project that they were going to have to do no matter what. Like even if it was just housing or a new wharf or whatever they'd want to develop down there now that they can do it. they'd still have to put a large amount of public money into redeveloping the infrastructure around it. There's no way to avoid that. So this is not unlike McLaurin. I don't know who's got the leverage here. DC is trying to pretend a little bit like they have some leverage here because they know the team wants to do this. At the same time, those that are pushing back against this are pushing back at a timeline, not necessarily the project. And the Post went through all of the council members and where they stand. There's one lost cause. There's one council member that has said no, under no circumstances. And the fact that it's only one is good for the team and the mayor, because if it was 3 or 4 of them that were like no public money for stadiums, they'd be in trouble here. But there's only one that's a lost cause that has stated from the get-go, I will not do this. Everyone else, as they described it, was yes, and or if you shift this, or yeah, probablys. So not unlike McLaurin. I think this is happening. Maybe not on the timeline that I think we all expected. I'm just waiting to see, because the Commanders put out a statement finally yesterday that was like, look, like, we want this done by this point because of this reason, not because we just want it done. We want the Women's World Cup here. If you do not get this stadium built by 2030, we will not have that. And yeah, I suppose we could just miss out on that, but I think it's actually a fair thing to say to them. This is why we want to do this now. There's a massive, huge Olympic style event that could happen in this stadium, maybe even the championship match, but you have to do this now to allow it to happen. So I think this will, but I do think that the Commanders and the mayor should be right to not be, maybe grant them a touch of patience, because they're asking for a few weeks if you read out what it says. But I would want a firm deadline on, if it's not July 15th, what is the deadline you're saying you could say yes or no to this? And I would put a firm deadline on it if I were the team.
I would say, like, in terms of what's been going on here between the team and the city, there hasn't been a lot laid out on the table. It was just more, we'd like to have this thing opened up by 2030. Yesterday, in the article, I think the first one that came out from Eric Black was Friday or Saturday. I think it was Friday, where this is now the second time they've mentioned the Women's World Cup. It tells me that this is done. Like, they have the World Cup ready to go to come to DC, and they're going, guys, we need this to happen right now so we can guarantee that this major event comes here.
This is a major international worldwide event where it sounds like the way they're pushing, the championship match would take place in this stadium in the nation's capital.
Exactly. And not to mention, like, they're also probably saying, you know, no one's going to say this in front or in public, but we all know it's true. The U.S. women's national team dwarfs the men's national team these days. So they're going, we would have the biggest U.S.-based soccer team playing here in this stadium. And who knows who travels for it? Because I know in a lot of the World Cup cities for the women's side of things, there's just hubs. So there would be more than one game. There would be a bunch of games here, most likely. And they're going, guys, get this done so we can get this going. And I kind of said it yesterday too. You're giving them that 2030 deadline so you can say, we want to open this stadium up, get the Commanders playing, work out the kinks. So then when that major thing comes in the summer of 2031, we have it ready to go. So this is the team going, guys, we have this in our back pocket. Let's get this thing done, because then we can announce that the World Cup's going to be here. And I think that was what yesterday really was. It was like, we have this. Pretty much get this through so we can announce it.
I won't go through everything that the Post wrote. They did a very good job, I think, of summarizing where each of the council members stand and what their hangups or holdups or, you know, wishes of alterations to the deal would be. A lot of it was about parking. A lot of it. So that's got to be something that can be discussed or fixed here. The reality is there's not a tremendous amount of parking there. They're talking about building garages. It sounded like there was a willingness to do a split of revenue of that. And so like that I read as not an enormous hang up or hold up, I wouldn't think, to get the parking situation done. There were others that had asked for, they want a more favorable split for the city. I mean, I'll hear you, like, you're always going to say something like that. You're going to try to get the best deal you can get. But I think the point was everything that I read, like, of where these council members stand and what their hangups are, none of them felt huge or precursors to a real problem to slow this thing down. It really sounded like, again, where I've kind of landed on most of it, where I think this is really a game of chicken, and they're trying to get the best deal they can on a timeline that even they admit is very short. Like when Phil Mendelssohn says, we're not going to get it done by July 15th, but says we could potentially have it done by the end of July. Like, you're not saying we need another year to analyze this. You're just saying we really want to squeeze stuff out of you. Can you just squeeze a couple of extra incentives for us so we can just get this done on your behalf quickly? So I still feel like it's happening. And I do feel like there's a game of chicken being played, and they're finally outwardly playing the card of, we know you don't want to go to Maryland or Virginia. We know you want to be here. So give us a little more and we'll make sure that it happens, and we'll grease the wheels. And I think the team is starting to finally, by putting out a statement, exerting in a nice way, there's a reason why we want to do this right now. You've got to listen to us. Like, this is why it needs to be done now. Stop waiting.
I think there's a side of this here too, though, because they're saying they have the Women's World Cup in their back pocket. They are going, you drag your feet any longer on this, maybe we do go to Maryland, and then Maryland gets the Women's World Cup too, because it's the same demographic. It's the same market that would go see the World Cup there than they would in DC too. I do think there's a little bit of a factor there. Like, I know Eric kind of in that 2 or 3 minute video that he dropped yesterday where he was like, I don't see that happening. I'm kind of like, I don't know, guys, don't, play with fire if you don't have to. Like, I think Wes Moore would step up right away and go, where do you want it? We got X, Y, and Z to put it. Where do you want to break ground tomorrow? Like, I think there's a factor there that they would get it up fast too. And so I think yesterday's statement too was going, we have this ready to go. And you know what? If they decide they want to do Landover, Maryland instead of downtown DC, it's still going to sell the same amount of tickets. Like, I think there's a little bit of that factor too of like, this is in our back pocket. This can go at any of the jurisdictions that we want, honestly.
I will be very surprised if this doesn't happen. The question is when, and I'll be very surprised if it doesn't happen this summer, that they agree to a deal. All right, let's take a quick break. Brad Buster Show is on 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Callow wore a Wizards hat today, so we have to talk about the Wizards. He's very excited about their moves. The first round, it does feel like the luck of the draft is not going their way. This is a few years in a row now. Famously, they missed out on Victor Wembanyama by like a ping pong ball.
Yep.
What happened last year? They missed out last year too by like an inch on someone. Who was it last year that they missed out on? I can't remember now. And this year, there was a lot of reporting about Ace Bailey, the almost consensus third best player on the draft board. Everybody knew Cooper Flagg was going number 1, ends up going to the Mavericks. Everybody knew Bailey's teammate, Dylan Harper, who's the son of Ron Harper, former great player in the NBA, was going to go number 2. That was kind of done and already cast, and the lot is done. Number 3 would have been, to most people, most people's belief who follow it, was going to be Ace Bailey. And he took an unusual track into the draft by refusing to do workouts for a lot of teams, and even admitted when he was selected 5th by Utah that he didn't know that they were going to take him, partially because he apparently turned down a workout for them, but had done interviews with them. And I thought most interestingly, the new president of basketball operations there is Danny Ainge's son. He just left the Celtics to go to this job. This guy had interviewed Bailey as a member of the Celtics front office before he ever got to Utah. Where did Bailey want to go? How did his people try to direct the draft? Whatever their plan was, it worked enough to get them to get skipped over to 5. But I think you could tell by his reaction and what he said, he didn't expect this to be the place that took him. And as someone who likes the sanctity of the draft, even though I'm starting to feel like it is, we're going to get more and more and more and more of this, of players going, you know what? You could draft me, but I don't want to be, I want to go where I want to go. Like I wouldn't be surprised we get more of it. It was nice to see a team hold the line and go, we think you're the best player, so we're selecting you, period.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this one too, I thought was really funny was when he got selected right away, it was like Utah intends to keep him. Like, because everyone thought right away, oh, they drafted him. They're going to try to squeeze something out of the Wizards or someone else to trade him. And moments after he was selected, it was they intend to keep him. And I was like, oh, that's different. And I think what's happening here too is this was a little bit of Shador, right? Where they clearly were trying to angle him to a certain place. And I even think the NBA was going, are we really going to let this happen? Like, are we going to let a rookie kind of force their way, let alone someone that's not the first or the second overall pick, but the third overall? You know what we kind of like? I think this is the league going, nah, we're just going to take the best player available. And that was Utah going,
yeah,
we're going to take you. Good luck with that. Trying to get out of here.
You know, who knows where Cooper Flagg wanted to go, but I can tell you right now, the Mavericks were going to be deaf to it. They don't care.
Right.
You think we're not taking you? Of course we're taking you.
Right.
And, you know, honestly, if you watch highlights of this guy and you watch his game and then you read all the things you hear about him, which is, I read a lot of stuff of insiders of college basketball specifically that had said things like, he's a little immature, which clearly looks like this, but they were like, this guy loves basketball. He sounds like he's a Jaden. He's like, loves basketball, loves it, loves it, loves it. It's the only thing he cares about. And he allowed some people who are in his inner circle to direct him in a way that maybe wasn't in his best interest. But in the end, if you get him, you're going to love him. And if you watch some of his, tape, you'll go, this guy might be it. Like he might be the best player in the draft outside of Flagg. And so the Wizards got, it looks like, again, a touch unlucky that Utah didn't fall for the, oh, you don't want to come here? We don't care. We're going to take you anyway because we think you're the best player. And so he ends up going there. The Wizards then in turn get Trey Johnson out of Texas. They had a second first-round pick at 18 that they traded down. They actually initially selected the Florida guard, who was great in the NCAA tournament in the Final Four, leading to a championship. But obviously with Bub on the team, when they selected him, it was obvious he wasn't going to stay on this team. They traded him to Utah, and they got a player out of Illinois who I know nothing about. So that's their two first-round picks. Trey Johnson, interested to hear what Winger and Dawkins and company say about him. I'm sure they'll say wonderful, wonderful things about him coming in. But it does feel like they remain lately missing it by that much. Just about that. Last few years, they're just missing each one of these guys by that much.
Well, I mean, look at last night. Had they not had the worst case scenario happen, dropping to 6, they would have drafted Bailey at number 5. Like that's where they were supposed to pick. And they dropped down that one spot. I couldn't help but laugh last night when it happened like this, because had they been there, they would have gotten them. But because they dropped literally one spot in a draft lottery that's supposed to benefit the teams that are, tanking, looking at you, Dallas, with your 1% chance to get the first overall pick, they have the worst luck in the league, and they don't get the guy that was trying to angle to come here. It is hashtag so Wizards. It's hashtag so Wizards.
So they now have what, is shaping up to be a starting lineup, of very, very young players, albeit with these other, I wouldn't even call Olynyk. I think the Olynyk was part of a deal to make something happen. They have 3 other veterans now in McCollum, Middleton, and Smart that obviously would play, but obviously are all trade candidates or buyout candidates, especially if they just say, hey, give me a break in January and let me out of this thing. So you're going to let me walk anyway. So let me go to a contender, which I think is possible. Trading any of them becomes difficult if you're not going to get a guy who's on their timeline. So of all the, when they say tradable parts of all these guys that they have that are going to have expiring contracts, I'm kind of like, well, if it's for the right guy who's on their timeline, who's making this kind of money to match it up, I wonder this. I don't know why the NBA has stipulated that the trades have to match up money-wise. There'd be a lot more trades in the NBA going on if they didn't force that to happen. The Wizards would be moving all of these guys if they could. There's probably a reason for it, and I probably have to ask somebody to understand why do they want this to be this way. But this is shaping up for Let's see what this young group looks like in year 3 for Koulibaly, year 2 for Sarr, year 2 for Bub. Now they get this rookie. These other veterans are going to be there that might make them a touch more competitive, than I think maybe people would expect, but they're not going to be good. These guys will all either be gone one way or the other, whether it's the end of next year or bought out or whatever it's going to be. And then we're going to see the first real move because they're going to have a ton of cap space and a lot of young players, and let's see what they do.
I mean, one thing I will say about this that I do love about the Trey Johnson pick is that, I think I saw David Aldridge tweet this last night, something along the lines of he's the best pure shooter in this draft, that, having him be a pure scorer, and you traded Jordan Poole, who was the leading scorer on this team. Yeah. I see the pathway here that they're going to try to just get that guy a bunch of shots. I'm okay with that. I'm with you looking at next year. That's great. You got $100 million in cap space, but I still don't know what you're going to do with that. And I think it was Brian Windhorst that said it yesterday. Also don't rule out the Wizards to take on a bad contract either, if they feel like the value is going to be there, because these guys are so young that getting someone next year might not line up on the timeline. That if you take a bad contract, but you get some first rounders in exchange or however it works, that don't rule that out either. That this is pure asset management by the Wizards over the last couple of days.
We're in this space where we could be doing business like that. Right. And all options are open to them. And the Thunder did a little bit of this to compile all of the picks that they got. But, the reality is one of these players is going to have to become their Shea if they're ever really going to get to this level that they're talking about. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe Trey Johnson's that. Maybe Sarr becomes a star. They got rid of Poole because they like Bub. So maybe who knows? Who knows? We'll see. We are in full trust the process with them, but it's next year. And I do feel like their luck has run out the last couple of years because they've been so close to getting the guys that look like the next level players, and they've just missed on all of them.
I mean, you know how it's going to work here. They're going to get the first overall pick next year, and it's not going to be somebody that's flag. This is just how this works out with this team. They should have never gotten Kwame Brown. They get the first overall pick, and it's a player that ends up being a bust. I already know how this year's going to go. Clip this for a year from now. They're going to get some guy for the first overall pick that's not going to be a first overall pick worthy type player. I bet is what's going to happen.
All right, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow. Bravo Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.